can't stay.
Hey everybody, Arthur here. We are ready for the June patch. By the time you're hearing this, it's already out there. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I'm just gonna kind of talk through a little bit about what we did this patch. Like almost every update, we were kind of down on ourselves, like, man, this has not been a good one. And even when Rob and I aren't saying it to each other, you know, we get that feeling. And I'm sure some of you guys feel the same way. It's just part of the process, though, is sometimes we need to take a step back and just take care of some of the issues that have been lingering. That's kind of what we've tried to do with this one. Hopefully you guys will all agree that it's generally been a pretty good one. Especially after looking over the notes, almost like every single time we look at the notes and we're stunned. It really is just a lot more. So I'm gonna talk through a little bit about what we did this patch, show a couple of highlights. I want to take a few moments to really show you guys how pathfinding works for aircraft. It is dramatically different than what it was before. They're much smarter, but it also requires a little bit more strategy. You have to be a little bit more realistic with your layouts. The taxiway layouts now really matter a lot more than they used to. It used to be they were just gonna get stuck, no other way about it, and that was what was gonna happen. We have now corrected that. It should be much better. And I'm looking forward to showing that to you. I've got a few other items I'll touch on here. Then I'm gonna talk about what we've been working on the last week or two. Some of you guys probably nervous that we've disappeared on you or something. We've only had a few updates released in the last week or two. Really, they've been pretty low hanging fruit, nothing huge. There's a reason for that. We're not doing nothing. We're not sitting on our hands. We're not sleeping. We've been getting a head start on the next update. We've got some great stuff coming down the pipe. Really huge improvements on the optimization front. You're going to be seeing that this upcoming cycle. Really, it's looking pretty close to ready to get onto Edge. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about aircraft pathfinding. I've set up a map real quick that we're going to use. I want to illustrate a few points. I'm going to show you guys a debug mode. This will kind of give away how this works to some degree. You know, so be it. We spent a ton of time on this. If it saves somebody else a little bit of time, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. Our goal is to make a great game. That's what we're here for. We work on this stuff every single day, 8 to 12 hours a day. What I want to do this is really to show you exactly how it works so that you've got a better idea of what strategy you need to commandeer in order to really make this work well for your airport. It really will have a big impact on how efficient your airport can be. So I've got this map up. I've got some cheat codes on here. I'm going to use those to kind of progress through this a little quicker, scheduled some flights, and give you guys an idea of what's going on here. Let's see what happens here. And here we go. So what you're seeing here used to be this would generally lead to a deadlock. These guys might end up on top of each other or something similar. He's going to C1 right here. And so you're going to see it actually gets out of its way. Now, the order in which this happens, who gets priority, is determined just by who decided they're coming first. There is no priority, it's all based on timing. They determine their timing before they even land. When he's about to land, it's almost like he's asking the ground controller for his taxi instructions while he receives his landing clearance. Okay, now what I want to do here is I want to show one of the most common layouts we see. So we see this all the time. It used to actually work pretty well. It'd let your aircraft kind of get around each other and not get stuck as often because they'd be able to kind of find a path. This is no longer going to work. It's actually going to be just a pure waste of space. I want to say worse. In many ways it is worse because you're just wasting space. It doesn't actually add any value. It doesn't allow more aircraft to be able to get through. And I'm going to show you exactly why that is true. I'm going to turn a little bit more debug on. What you're seeing right now is these colors. Each aircraft has its own color. These are similar but different. That shows where we expect the aircraft to be. You could think about this like it's a ground controller who's plotting it out on a map or a computer system. Now, when this aircraft got to this space here, you can see that we expect him to occupy all of this area. And the way this works now is that when an aircraft is at a given position, that aircraft can only be at that position if he was able to secure that position and all positions adjacent to it. That means, as you're going to see here in just a moment, that when he gets onto this area, he's taking up 4 taxiways. 4 taxiway tiles, and when he's going south here, he's actually blocking the entire thing. So don't do this anymore. It doesn't help you at all. It just takes up space and provides no value. Additionally, what's happening here when somebody wants to undock? So this aircraft is gonna force him to leave. Okay, so you may see he's saying stuck, and he's not really stuck. What he's saying is he really doesn't have any good path right now. They're only searching for a path 3,000 time steps into the future. Time steps are a couple of game minutes. It's about how long they take to traverse one taxiway tile or 10 tiles. So the reason for that is that he's not going to undock until he knows that he has a clear path to the runway. Now, he doesn't need the full clear path to be there right now. He's thinking about it in space-time in the future. In addition to needing a space-time path at some time in the future, he also needs to be able to secure the taxiway nodes that are directly adjacent to his gate for long enough time for him to do his undocking sequence. And so that was what was going on here. Now, as soon as navigated a little bit further south, he was able to undock, and you can see his path. He's going to now begin to follow it. Same thing's going to happen down here. As soon as he vacated that position, this aircraft was able to undock. Okay, so the key takeaway here, the thing to know, there's a couple. First, this doubled taxiway, just stop doing it. Blanket statement, it provides 0 value for you at this point in time. The second key thing to know here and where strategy comes in is avoiding this scenario where the way I've got this set up, B1 is almost always going to end up being the most on-time flight. Any aircraft at C1 is going to be just a little bit less likely to be on time. D1 is going to struggle to be on time far and away more than the other gates. Similarly, A1 in this case is going to have very little prayer. The flights will get in and out, but because they're located a main thoroughfare, they're going to be subject to the other traffic. And likewise, when they do begin to undock, they're going to block up the other traffic and slow them down. Some of this is kind of common sense, but seeing it play out like this hopefully will help illustrate exactly what is going on under the hood in hopes of helping you be able to really use this knowledge to your advantage and be able to create really efficient taxiways. Similar to in real life now, the most efficient taxiway systems are going to be those that mimic real life. Basically, plenty of space. These aircraft now are smart. They're not going to get hung up the long corridors. Used to be we recommended avoid long corridors. Now it's quite the opposite. You really want a taxiway system that looks something like this, that gives you plenty of options and allows your aircraft to choose paths that are going to be out of the way of other operations. You want to try to keep little islands of gates away from the main thoroughfares. Gates on corners are going to be particularly bad because you're going to block that gate in, and likewise when that gate has operations, you're going to clog up your thoroughfare. This is actually a little bit less robust of an algorithm than we had prior, but it's just more straightforward. It really is. It's just more straightforward. It's just always going to work. You basically should never see a stuck aircraft again. The only way that we've been able to conceive it could happen is construction. If an aircraft gets locked onto the wrong runway, we're going to take a look at fixing that up in the next cycle. We've made a couple of small improvements there. Generally though, unless you're destroying your taxiway system or really changing stuff up, you shouldn't see them stuck. If they are stuck, either you very recently removed a runway, cut off access to a runway, or you've got one-ways set up in a way that doesn't work. And I want to show an example of that. This keeps coming up in the forum as well. Okay, so this is a solid one-way setup. What you don't want to do though is something like this. So in this case, there is absolutely no way to get to these gates. You'll see no aircraft would land right now. It's because what these arrows mean is any aircraft that gets on this tile must go this direction. And so the way this is set up, there is literally no possible way for an aircraft to go south from this taxiway area. This is a pretty common one we see. We talked about, there was a forum discussion about potentially just removing one-ways. Their value is far less with the pathfinding all fixed than it used to be. It used to be that it really could be super helpful in just making your aircraft not act stupid. Now, however, the aircraft are going to be pretty smart. Really, the only theoretical value of the one-way taxiways at this point in time is to allow you to reduce the volatility of your taxiway times. My recommendation is if you don't understand exactly what you're doing with them, don't even mess with them. If you do understand exactly what you're doing with them, or you like to play with them and build that understanding, key thing to keep in mind is that your goal isn't to tell your aircraft exactly which way to go. Your goal is to hopefully steer your aircraft in such a way where you prevent the corner problems, the throughfare problems. And so in this case, the only thing we've done is tell these guys they must go this way to get out. There's implicitly a one-way all through here. You know, the aircraft can maneuver within there, but they're not going to be able to ever come out this way, so they'll always be hitting here and going left. The idea behind the one-ways, though, in general, is just to reduce your worst-case scenario. Oftentimes, that also means slightly worsening your best-case scenario. The overall idea is to just minimize the variance in total. Be able to end up with most of your taxiway times from runway to gate or gate to runway falling very close to the average without any outliers, or much fewer. Gonna depend on the layout. It's not always achievable. What I've got set up here probably is somewhat dubious. Hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of what exactly the value is. Now, I'll go ahead and let these guys run through one more time. There's also new in this patch. Your runway lengths, when an aircraft comes into land now, the aircraft only has to roll out as far as their minimum runway distance. If you make sure you have turnoffs at the distances on the runway for the aircraft that are landing, you'll be able to get the aircraft to vacate the runways a little bit quicker, gain a little bit of efficiency there. You don't want to double up along the entire length of the runway because you'll run into that same issue we talked about a little bit ago. Very similar to that. When an aircraft takes off, just like when an aircraft needs to undock, he must have the entire runway freed. There is a good bit more strategy here, like I said, but when you're trying to eke out an extra couple of slots on your schedule, everything adds up. And, I mean, this is all the stuff we think about. Hopefully it doesn't go unnoticed. We're gonna get a tutorial in soon. In the meantime, that is aircraft pathfinding. The things that we've got going on this patch, you know, there's just a ton here. There's not a ton of headliner stuff, what we call headliners, stuff that's been left hanging. A couple of cool new things. One is the SimAirport mechanic. You can see the requirements here. Add some in-game to the entire gameplay. You know, we know that it gets repetitive, it gets a little bit boring. We still got a ton of work to do on the late game. This functionality really should help a lot. Provides a stopgap for a step in the right direction in terms of adding some late game gameplay. So we've added connecting flights. I'm not a whole lot to show here, but now up to 10% of your passengers will come from a different flight. So some arrival passengers, up to 10% of them, will be boarding a different flight. It just adds a little bit more complexity. You need to make sure your terminal's set up in a way that can cater to that. Our long-term goal here really is to go the direction of aircraft relationships and negotiation. I saw an awesome thread the other day. I want to dive into it, but part of me doesn't want to yet because I know we're not quite ready to really start working on it. It is something, though, that thread, I really enjoyed it because you guys were really getting at the core of the issue, and that's coming up with the algorithms. Just these little formulas, that's what powers the entire game. Everything in the game is math. It's shockingly difficult to get that math right. It's not hard math or anything. It's a matter of finding the right equation that doesn't overestimate, underestimate. It's the same thing with like passenger AI. It's a lot easier said than done in terms of what math should be used to determine how far a passenger should walk to an open queue when he's already in a queue that's longer right now. It varies by person in real life. I'm fairly lazy. I'm probably not going to leave my queue unless it's a 30-minute difference. Getting that right and making sure that all your passengers don't leave at once to go to the other queue. All this stuff is just math. So I was excited to see that thread. You guys are getting at the crux of the issues. I do want to jump into that thread soon and kind of steer you guys towards what can be most valuable for you guys to help us start figuring out. It's just a matter of, making sure that you guys are aware of what all the problem points are so that you can come up with math that helps. Let me see. We've added a new bank loan system. This is entirely new. Everything is now credit rating based. You apply for a loan. Your interest is now based on your credit rating, which we don't currently show you. We still want to do more with this. Not a ton more. I don't want to go down the avenue of negotiating with banks or picking a bank. There's just not any gameplay value. Who cares if the bank's name is JJ Bank versus Wentworth Cap? It's all the same stuff. At the end of the day, you want some money, there's going to be interest and your ability to repay it. That's what matters. We don't want to end up with banks that are evaluating, just like nobody wants to micromanage that stuff. You want some money so you can build your airport. Anyway, we have added this new bank loans. We haven't gotten a ton of feedback on it. Part of the issue, I think, is that on Edge, as many of you know, we allow research to be skipped to help you guys test faster and get us feedback faster. I've been thinking about that. Part of me thinks that we maybe should remove that. I was thinking about this a bunch last week, and I was actually wondering, should we maybe even go a week or two period where we only allow you to play Edge on career mode? The reason I say that is we get a ton of our feedback, perhaps the vast majority of it that's not just bug fighting, we get from Edge players. And so I have a fear or concern that we kind of miss out on some of the balance feedback, or at least the live feedback loop that we get on Edge. We still hear the feedback. We know balance still needs some work. I think it's gotten dramatically better lately. But I fear that the feedback loop there is too long. So I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think, if you'd be okay with us, forcing you to play career mode, or at least forcing new maps to be career mode. The idea, again, would be in the interest of helping us get that really short feedback loop so that we can make balance changes and get real feedback on them much quicker. Along those same lines, as we're going to be working on the tutorial soon, hopefully enough of you guys will be willing and interested in helping us perfect that tutorial. Most of you guys know how to play the game pretty darn well at this point. You probably know many of the mechanics as well or better than we do. But that in mind, we're going to need feedback on that. We want to make sure that the new player experience is good, that we're teaching people the right things, that it's not a terrible experience. I personally can't stand playing a tutorial. I'd rather kind of fumble around all levels across the spectrum of that. So kind of wonder, should we force Edge players to go through the tutorial? And again, you'll always be able to get around any of this by loading an existing save or the like. But just some ideas, give you guys an idea of where my head's been at. It's something that has crossed my mind. So let's talk about a couple other things we got here. Huge thank you to Ursus on Discord. His username is linked in the notes. He single-handedly created Russian translation. We couldn't thank him enough for that. It's just incredible. We appreciate it tremendously. We got him a couple of things. Anybody else though, if you are interested in creating a language from scratch, get in touch. We'll set you up on GitHub with what you need. We really appreciate it, and more than that, the community appreciates it. Guys like that going out of their way to really help the game, I mean, it's just huge. So thank you very much. It's great to be able to add Russian to the game. Okay, gonna talk through just a couple of items just to kind of touch on. We added the digital ad board this round. This is kind of cool. It wasn't something we'd ever talked about, and I'm glad to have gotten it in. The way this works, as passengers come by, this will track how many passengers, and the more passengers, the more revenue it'll generate. The idea being your advertisers are more interested. Eventually, I'd love to go more depth with this, being able to lease out multiple of these for a flat fee or performance-based, etc. This is a first iteration of it. It's pretty cool. It's a nice new revenue stream. When they're positioned well, you can make some decent money off them. We did have to nerf them a little bit during the cycle, but it's pretty cool. One neat thing that I really liked, kind of a geeky thing, but if you're into it, I hope you do enjoy it. We added the ability here, there's a special folder that you can drop new images in, and you can either hit reload sprites or you can restart SimAirport, and you can actually get your own advertisements in the game on your boards. Kind of cool, you know, just one of those little things that hopefully some of you guys actually enjoy. I thought it was pretty neat myself. Okay, we got a couple of little things. We got some new build hotkeys, pretty neat. X, C, and the left shift is a modifier key. These are just quick ways to get to demolish. It works like a toggle. So if I'm building a fence, I don't want to do that. I can hit X and get my demolish tool, hit it again, I'm back to my fence. We got the same thing going for clear, and then we also have a build modifier, which is really helpful for things like queues. If you're drawing out a queue, oops, I want to remove that. You can hold shift, left shift, and get that. The left shift only works on a few of these, but it does come in handy. Handful of new objects. We got new info objects. The info that's been there a while. We've got the new XL info, the info kiosk. Also along these lines, we fixed, finally, the flight info display should now be able to put it in any location without running into any obstacles or it giving you phantom random warnings. Another one of those things we finally were able to just kind of cross off the list that have been bugging you guys for a while. Got a whole bunch of passenger AI fixes, tweaks, improvements in. Turned out there were a couple of bugs on some of the AI stuff. Last default. Really, we had a handful of bugs get through last default. It happens. We did run one hot fix. We definitely should have run another. We just were kind of fairly far into the cycle at that point. It happens. We don't love it. We're sorry for those of you guys who did hit crashes. You know, unfortunately, we've had it fixed on Edge now for over a month. There's a lot of that going on in here. There's fairly significant performance improvements just from a lot of little stuff that we kind of uncovered, and no single fix or performance improvement was overly beneficial, but the sum of all parts was quite helpful. Got new arcade zone, check that out, kind of cool. Helps with passenger boredom. We got, I believe there's 4 arcade games, different styles of them. A little bit of nostalgia for some of you guys. I know I kind of enjoyed that. Kind of neat. Some nice new content. Okay, so there's one change this cycle. It's been a little bit arguable, and that is the taxiway distance. So you're gonna see now the taxiway tool up this new 10 tile border around it. This is showing you what clearance you require. And when you try to build too close to an existing structure or object, you're gonna see this warning: must be sufficiently clear of nearby obstructions. A while back, and even recently, we had heard bug reports. My aircraft are halfway through my terminal. And it was true. If you built a taxiway right here and the aircraft taxis down there, yeah, the wings are gonna overlap the terminal. It looks stupid, it's not realistic. And now that the aircraft pathfinding is solid, it just doesn't make any sense to try to fit in all these taxiways like this. It just doesn't help you. It actually makes things worse. We wanted to go the realism route here. It makes for better looking airports. Generally, they're going to be better functioning. I noticed this is a bug. The fence doesn't respect it. But generally, all the tools should respect it. You know, there may be a few things that we've missed. There are a few exceptions. Gates, of course, can be near taxiways. Gates, fuel depot, runway upgrades, hangars, of course. Control tower cannot. This is what you'll see if you try to place an object too close. Yeah, so you get the idea. I know this has been, you know, there's mixed feelings on it. I do think long term it makes the most sense. Those of you following closely in the forum know that I'm a proponent of making the map sizes much bigger. That would obviously help a lot. You'd be able to build, you know, massive taxiways. At the very least, I'd like to allow you to build taxiways on a huge map, even if we can't let you build, or if there's no reason to build these huge foundations. If we could allow you to build taxiways anywhere you want, it would make it less of an issue, I think. Nonetheless, I personally think this is a positive change. hopefully you'll agree, generally speaking, that it really is. And I think that especially once we can open the map size up a little bit more, it shouldn't pose any issues for you at all. Again, just another aspect though of planning your taxiways requires a little bit more strategy. You got to plan them out a little bit more. I mean, that's the idea here, is to add depth, content to some degree, but equal with content to me is systems. And that's kind of the driving factor here. Beyond just the realism, that the appearance is better and all that. That's that change, and we're going to work towards increasing the map sizes here in the future. And that is actually a great segue into talking about what is coming in the future. First off, you guys probably think that we've been on vacation or something, right? There haven't been a ton of updates here lately, and yeah, I can't blame you. Well, we could maybe use a vacation here soon, but that is not what we've been doing. What we have been doing is maybe a little selfishly even working on performance nonstop. We went to the nitty gritty. Like, we can optimize each little thing. We can make gates 0.00 milliseconds faster, or every single thing we can make 0.0001 milliseconds faster. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't help at all. Wouldn't be a noticeable impact. So what we did is we took a look at the grand scheme. Where is the most time being spent? And what we saw is it's basically movement. And we've already got some of that threaded, some of the computations for it at least. We haven't moved to other threads or other cores. We try to take advantage of more of the CPU. And we already do that exact same thing with all the beefy stuff, the stuff that really matters. Passenger AI, computational stuff for sectors. Pathfinding is the big one. Of course, all that stuff is already threaded, and at the end of the day, what happens is some of your CPU cores have some idle time still. Meanwhile, you've got 15, 30 frames a second. On some maps, some machines, you may have way worse, right? And so what we did is we figured out what the heck can we do to just attack this problem head on. Over the last couple of months, we had been playing around with it here and there. We do this all the time. Well, probably only 60% of what we actually work on in the code ends up directly on Edge and default. Often we're just trying things, figuring out what is the correct approach, what approach is gonna work. We had done that work several months back. We had been trying a few different things. We weren't sure exactly what way we were going to go. We had some viable options. Well, it became pretty clear to us, and we went ahead and went that direction with it. About 3 weeks ago, we really embarked on that process, and we were just pretty amazed. We were excited about it. We kind of ignored Edge a little bit for the last week or so, just staying focused on performance. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. It's also selfish. We love attacking challenging problems like that. You know, time to time, that's just going to happen. Same thing happened when we were working on multiple floors. There aren't a whole lot of huge technical problems ahead of us after performance, but, you know, it'll probably happen again. The great thing is the approach is going to work. It's looking great. So what we did is we basically attacked this head on. We figured out Unity spends way too much time figuring out how to render all this stuff. We know what we need to render. Let's figure out a way to do that fast. We want to be able to do it in parallel on other threads. We have all these CPU cores that are just sitting idle. How can we make use of those without making the game itself, the render thread, the main thread, be reduced to 10 to 20, 30 frames a second or worse? And so we came up with a solution. It is going to be much better. It's not going to be the end-all be-all. What you're going to see, you'll see this very soon when this hits Edge in the next cycle, that it's going to kind of make light of other areas where performance problems exist. The reality is, though, you're still, right away, you're going to get much better frame rates on large passenger counts. We haven't pushed it to its limit yet, but I would guess most of you will see 5,000 or so passengers at 60 frames a second. We even are now able to do things like animations. So you're going to see all the agents are going to lose their cartoony look. I hate that description of them. I don't think they look cartoony, kind of an art style. But so be it. They're going to look a lot more realistic. The perspective of the agents will be accurate with the perspective of everything else indoors. The agents are going to walk with a walking animation. And so that entire area is really getting an overhaul. It does look much better. What you can expect is that to hit Edge in the near future, it's going to look a little bit better. It may be a little rough at first with the animations, but the main thing is it's going to run really fast, and it opens the door. We can now thread the heck out of it and make it much, much faster, even beyond what it'll debut as. There will be some hitches here and there. Hey, maybe the moving walkways have a performance problem. Those are all the easy technical challenges. We've surmounted those before. It's mostly a problem of identifying them. The tough one is the one that we're actually solving with this next cycle. And so we're really pumped about it. Just talking at a little bit of a higher level, where we're at, what's coming down the pipe. Performance, number one thing. Not a whole lot more needs said there, I don't think. In my mind, there are only a couple other things that really desperately need attention, that are just either broken or truly problematic. And Rob and I have talked about this at length. That's our goal. I mean, this is reflected in the roadmap. We've updated the roadmap. We try to keep it updated. And I know this cycle went much longer than we kind of really expected, although truth be told, we just kind of delayed it because we're already working on the next cycle. It's gonna happen. Those three things, though, that we really feel are broken, need severe attention. Our performance, of course, we're working on it. That's gonna be fixed soon. Cafes and retail. I can't stand the system. I would love to get some detailed ideas on what you guys would like to see. I think we want to move towards like a rental type model, selling the space. How should the price be determined? We still probably need to track how much money is being made so that the tenants can figure out how much they're willing to pay. I foresee some kind of like maybe negotiation-ish relationship type thing where tenants are trying to buy leases. Something along those lines. Probably a little bit more similar to aircraft scheduling in some regards, with the contracts that are accepted and reneged. That's what I've got in my head. Okay, so we've got retail. It's just broken. I can't stand the mechanic. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's too micro for what the game evolved into. We have sprites ready for shopping mall type, individual little clothing items. Probably use those sprites and everything, but I don't think that managing that inventory, which is really what I originally had in mind, I'm not sure that it makes any sense at this point. I would like to stay on the more macro level with it, whether that's build to suit and find a tenant, negotiate, lease it out, something along those lines. Give us your ideas. We love ideas with numbers in them, formulas, really helpful. There's so many great ideas. Getting 90% of any feature is the easy part. The last 10% of any feature, whether it's retail, whether it's aircraft pathfinding and making it look really nice and be synced up. Any detailed ideas, formulas, that kind of stuff that can give us something we can just kind of implement, a rough approximation, super helpful. Love to hear you guys' ideas on cafes, retail in general. The goal is not just your burger joints and your restaurants, but also to be able to build luggage store, news store, or Hudson News, that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind. We want a model that really fits any kind of retail, which is why we've always called it retail. The other thing that's really broken, or it's not broken, it just doesn't exist, is a tutorial. This seems like a no-brainer. Most games typically release and they have one already. We've been able to make it this far without one, and I'm not gonna lie, we're not really looking forward to building a tutorial. It just seems tedious and monotonous, and we're not teaching experts, or we'd be teachers. We're developers, and there just aren't a ton of technical challenges with it. We will try to reduce it to some kind of technical challenge. My thinking right now is kind of an objective-based system for the tutorial, potentially being able to kind of skip between scenes to learn specific parts. Would love to hear your guys' ideas and even examples of games you think have done tutorials well. There are examples across the board. In this genre of game, personally, I don't love tutorials, but I personally haven't seen very many tutorials I like. I tend to just want to kind of fumble through it and figure it out. We would love to hear your thoughts on tutorials, what you think would work, what wouldn't work well. Even an idea like, what would you like to see explained? Those of you that are very experienced, what would you like to see explained further? Ideas on how to present that, what the information is. Should it just be videos? That would be great. We could implement a video player. I don't think that's probably the way to go, but again, love some feedback, but this is a big one for us. The game has become a lot more complex, and at first people were upset. This game is too easy, it's too simple, it's all this stuff. We've heard it all at this point, but now we're starting to hear the opposite. and we're never gonna make everybody happy. We're not fooling ourselves, I promise. We want to give people a fighting chance. We want to allow people that are new to the genre in general to be able to get in there and have some fun. And so that's our goal. For instance, I'm always bummed out when I hear people talking about the baggage system and they don't know you can right click on ports. Now, part of that's a UX issue, one we can improve and solve, but along those lines, assigning one queue to multiple desks, those types of things, it would just be great if we could get a good tutorial in. That is one of our highest priorities after we get performance done, that and retail. So hopefully that gives you guys a pretty good idea kind of where we're headed, what we've got in front of us. You know, those are just the three major things. Those are the really broken things. We have a whole lot more of little stuff we want to get to, a lot of content, system improvements. There's really a ton, way too much to go into, but just to give you a high level idea where we're headed. Anyway, that wraps us up for June, probably running way long already. Hope you guys enjoyed this patch, hopefully a little bit cleaner patch this time around. We're going to be diving into this next Edge cycle pretty quick though. Thank you everyone for staying involved, for helping us make this a great game. We really couldn't do it without you. If you haven't already and you're having a good time, you got a bunch of hours in the game, please consider leaving us a review. It's a huge way to support the game, support us as well. We'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, enjoy the patch. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.